But like an actress. A common little showgirl.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're comparing the Crown's accents versus the real royals.
She had a way of sometimes complimenting you and putting you down at the same time.
For this list, we'll be looking at how closely this royal drama's cast nailed their real-life counterparts' accents. Who do you think replicated the royal dialect best? One must share one's thoughts in the comments. Number 9. Princess Anne. Season 3 introduced us to Erin Doherty's fierce and fabulous Princess Anne. The actress shared that she initially struggled with the princess's accent since it felt so foreign.
And it's important, while answering those questions, that you remain clear-headed, unemotional, rational and calm.
As opposed to what? The hysterical and neurotic way I normally behave.
According to Doherty, the princess, quote, suppresses her voice. It's kind of this odd, low placement. She studied her speech through YouTube videos, apparently relying heavily on one in particular to help her find the correct range.
You grow up with it, so they rather think you know everything. And
Yes,
you don't.
assume.
I mean, you do actually have to learn, and you do. And experience, I'm afraid, is the only way.
Like her real-life counterpart, Doherty manages to limit her jaw movement and still deliver lines with all the conviction and sass they deserve. It's so far from the actress's native accent and understandably required a lot of practice. Doherty certainly nailed the royals' sound, demeanor, and grace, and inadvertently made the fictional Anne, and real princess, the season's standout character.
Evidently, I've gone from invisible to visible.
No, you were always visible.
But somehow you'd never seen me. Now you're making up for it. By gawping.
Number 8. Winston Churchill. As any history buff knows, Winston Churchill had a distinct drawl.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
We imagine this is a tough sound for any Brit to replicate, let alone an American. However, the showrunners wanted an actor from across the pond to highlight the Prime Minister's eccentricities, noting that Churchill's mom was American. John Lithgow noticed that the Prime Minister tended to speak from the back of his mouth, so he initially tried to mirror this idiosyncrasy by stuffing his cheeks with balls of apples.
And we did read a scene, and I thought it was extremely effective. But bit by bit, my entire mouth was filling up with like apple cider.
This was later replaced by little blobs attached to his back teeth that helped him maintain Churchill's remarkable speech impediments. He'd also stuff cotton up his nose to get that nasal sound. Needless to say, Lithgow did his homework, and the result speaks for itself.
Don't be alarmed if you hear no response. I shall be making mental notes.
Number 7. Margaret Thatcher. Much like the woman she portrayed, Gillian Anderson's Thatcher impression was considered rather divisive.
What am I doing here? Miles from Westminster, miles from reality.
There's no denying that Anderson brilliantly reflected the essence of the controversial politician with her lower register and hesitant breathiness. However, as some noted, the Crown's version sounded more like a caricature of the real Iron Lady.
It's not comparing like with like.
Ah, now that's where we differ.
In the series, Thatcher sounds perpetually exasperated and frustratingly patronizing. Although, those who knew her might say that isn't a far stretch from the truth.
I have only one thing to say. You turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
If we closed our eyes, could we picture the real Thatcher talking? Well, she's no Meryl Streep in The Iron Lady, but packaged with the rest of her outstanding performance and wrapped neatly in a pussy bow, Anderson made for a rather compelling and believable Margaret Thatcher.
Britons are learning to look after number one, to get ahead, and only then, if they choose to look after their neighbor.
Number 6. Camilla Shand, Parker Bowles. We're no stranger to seeing Britain's new queen consort on our screens. However, we don't often hear her speak, so we imagine Emerald Fennell had her work cut out for her. Still, if you listen to the royal's rare interviews and compare them to her fictional counterpart, we think you'll be impressed.
It's what all these very brave ladies tell me. It's seeing is believing, or hearing is believing.
Fennell clearly did a deep dive into Camilla's on-screen appearances, and the payoff is evident. Apparently, the actress voiced her interest in playing this character early on, so she had plenty of time to do her research.
Should ask if there's any part of this that hasn't surprised me.
A good surprise?
I think so.
You don't sound certain.
No, I am. I think.
You seem to be doing a lot of thinking.
It's the worst thing one can do.
The real Camilla called Fennell her, quote, alter ego, and joked that she would call on her should she ever need a stand-in. We reckon that means she thinks Fennell did a pretty good job.
Where you were a complete triumph. It'll go down in history as one of the great Balmoral debuts, the perfect 10.
Number 5. Princess Margaret. Vanessa Kirby explained that the accent used by the British royal family, also known as received pronunciation, is so unique that it was almost like hearing a new dialect. She also noted hints of a German accent, indicative of the family's heritage.
You prefer me to be unlovely?
I prefer you to be yourself, though I realize it's asking the impossible.
Why? Because I'm uncooperative.
The show's dialect supervisor, William Conacher, added that the key to nailing the voice was to move your jaw as little as possible to manipulate how the words come out. Helena Bonham Carter shared that she would lean into the stereotypical, and in this case literal, stiff upper lip to channel her character.
Well, that's a very common attitude. It's also quite an old-fashioned attitude.
Did you just call me common? And old? Because that would not be a good way to start.
If there are any two characteristics Bonham Carter can dominate, it's posh and eccentric. Perhaps it also helped that she'd met the princess and reportedly later received the late royal's blessing to play her.
I've spent my whole life as vice queen. Except that came out wrong. I didn't mean I'm a vice queen.
Number 4. Diana, Princess of Wales. Given the magnitude of Diana's fame, most of us could easily recognize her voice with our eyes shut.
I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, in people's hearts. But I don't see myself being queen of this country.
However, if you played a soundbite of the late princess next to the actor who played her in season 4, you might struggle to tell them apart. Emma Corrin shared the word they'd used to help them find Diana's voice.
Mine was all right. All right.
They said that Diana's inflection tended to go down at the end of her sentences, reflecting her sweetness, sincerity, and often sadness. Corrin also worked with Conacher, who helped them find Diana's voice and movements to give audiences a realistic portrayal of this beloved figure.
But I love to perform. It's how I can best express myself. And how I can show what I really feel.
Based on what we've heard from the actress who's set to take over the role, we have no doubt Elizabeth Debicki will also do the icon justice. Number 3. Charles, Prince of Wales. Josh O'Connor took a slightly different approach from his co-stars when portraying the then future British king.
But obviously, it's been a great help. There's a lot to be done. It's going to be marvellous to have somebody to help sort it out.
He studied the prince's speech patterns with Conacher, explored his body language with movement director Polly Bennett, and watched lots of old footage in preparation. Ultimately, though, O'Connor was more focused on creating a character than mirroring reality.
But I'm really rather happy at Cambridge. Not to mention I've just been cast in a wonderful role.
Even so, the actor confessed that he worked really hard to master Charles's dialect, while the Welsh dialogue in season 3 was, quote, all right. Still, there's something recognizable about this Prince Charles that piqued our interest and made us want to know more about the future king.
Why?
Because I have a beating heart. A character. A mind and a will of my own. I am not just a symbol.
His approach appealed to many and earned him an Emmy Award. We're sure Dominic West, who takes over the role, will also do O'Connor's Prince Charles proud. Number 2. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
I think that the main lesson that we've learned is that tolerance is the one essential ingredient of any happy marriage. It may not be quite so important when things are going well, but it is absolutely vital when things get difficult.
Matt Smith did a marvelous job at portraying an empathetic, if slightly jaded character.
You forget, I have seen firsthand what it is like for a royal family to be overthrown because they're out of step with the people.
But slipping into the prince's voice was no easy task. Apparently, the royal had a very precise way of saying words like was and won, which turned out to be the bane of Smith's stint on the show.
Well, was apparently is the right way, but it was...
Was one. One.
Was one. That was a real... That was a bee in my bonnet.
Still, like the actual prince, Smith's character's speech was often clipped and curt, but without taking himself too seriously. Despite his struggles, Smith laid a sturdy foundation for Tobias Menzies.
Who's our favourite?
My favourite or your favourite?
Is it different?
I'd say so, yes.
The latter also made the accent sound effortless, as we're sure Jonathan Pryce will in the following seasons. There's a lot to remember, from shortening vowels to distinct pronunciations that sound foreign, even to a British ear. Yet they make it look and sound easy.
Extraordinary. I think I'm not talking so much about reviews in that sense, as perspectives, observations.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Queen Elizabeth II. If you ever heard Queen Elizabeth II speak, you'll notice that her English doesn't quite sound like the average Brit on the street.
When people in 53 years from now look back on us, they will doubtless view many of our practices as old-fashioned.
Indeed, Conacher didn't want The Crown's Elizabeth to sound like a parody, but she also needed to be relatable and believable. As we previously saw, the actors were instructed to barely let the words slip out between their teeth to achieve this unique sound when they talked.
What would you have me start?
Open up, ma'am. Lower the drawbridge. Let people get to know you.
I don't wish to be known.
You can also hear noticeable differences in how they pronounce vowels that are barely heard today. Claire Foy does it so perfectly that hearing her actual voice is somewhat jarring. Meanwhile, Olivia Colman revealed the words that helped her get into character.
If you say E-A-R-S...
Ears?
That's yes. Ew.
I'm sorry. Say it as the Queen, please.
Is.
Yeah.
That's it.
We have no doubt that Imelda Staunton's performance will also be fit for a queen. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.